Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to do another coaching call. We have created the program based upon the recommendations that both you and Berto thought about. There was some discrepancies in whether we thought my quad should be a priority now or that's something we should face in the future. But at the very least, I think we landed on when we do start specializing, we shouldn't de-emphasize the quads. We should pull it from other places.
Yeah.
But the plan, I've got a 12-week program where the first 6 weeks are just basically minor tweaks to the existing plan that we've been milking and it's been going well. And then the final 6 weeks are a lat specialization where we pulled a bit from arms, we pulled a bit from hamstrings and glutes, and pulled like a teensy bit from pressing, but not a whole lot to accommodate that additional lat work. And then there's some, exercise selection placement changes to the given days. So as it stands now, we've still got our 5, what I talked you into becoming 6 days for that 6th day where I do a little additional lower body work plus forearms and calves. We got day 1 where we're still doing chest, back, and shoulders. The main change there is just kind of tweaking things. You actually had me doing a few more shortened biased exercises here and there. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way you saw it was, listen, you're training upper body like 3.5 times a week. I want to make sure that you're recovered, so we're kind of sneaking in volume that probably won't have as long of a recovery arc. Was that kind of your thought process?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, from trial and error, I found that I'm always fresh and ready to go for each one of my upper body days. So I've slowly phased out in kind of an incremental fashion some of the more shortened bias work because I didn't feel I needed the benefit of more recovery, and I thought I could benefit from having just more effective exercises. So that showed up in a few spots, which we'll go over. But let's just start with day 1. Really, the only major change there is the bench press we were doing, which I do kind of like a medium grip. I have it listed as close grip, but it's just close relative to me thinking as a powerlifter who benches max legal. Yeah. We've got the cambered bar bench, which I don't think it's going to make a massive difference. One of the things about length and training is that a lot of exercises are that inherently. A good way to contextualize some of the recent chatter around when emphasizing the stretch is going to be beneficial, it really comes down to, does performing the exercise as traditionally done through a full range of motion, is there enough energy and effort expended when your muscle's in a shortened position to potentially take away from the efforts and the work you can do in the lengthened position? And if the answer is no, then there's probably not a huge benefit you're going to get from emphasizing those.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, even with lengthened partials, doing them after, like a post-failure partial cluster, they make more sense to me from that vantage point to do on more short and biased movements where you're experiencing that, you're kind of failing in the shortened position first. You still have some force production in that bottom position. I don't personally program a lot of lengthened partials on lengthened biased work.
Back work. One of the ways you could test this is try to do post full ROM failure partials in the lengthened position on a given exercise. So I can get like one additional lengthened incline dumbbell press once I hit. I kill myself to get a rep, and then it's like, so it's like clearly that is already the limiting factor. So it is basically already a lengthened bias movement. And that's true of most pressing. So going from a normal barbell to a cambered bar bench, it's not going to do a whole lot, but it does just give me additional range, a little bit extra stretch.
Yeah.
So that's the only real change to day 1. Day 2, that's my limbs day. That's legs and arms. The big one was going to wedge Smith machine squats, not just having leg press twice per week. And I've been really liking those. I find I can quads, but I can make it very quad dominant.
Yeah.
And it's surprising how much your load is limited on something like that.
Oh yeah. And that's a great movement. But I've noticed that too, because I've been playing around with those in my own training, and it's you hit a wall. And it's crazy how you could move your foot forward 1.5 inches, and it makes your poundages are down significantly. So I'm doing 315 or 3 plates a side on that is like, that's a hard set.
Yes.
So, and yeah, you just hit that sticking point, and you want to, yeah, stay in the quads, and on a back squat, and even on Smith machine. I mean, you can kick your hips back and reallocate, but it's feels much less natural doing it when your feet are in front. So I think it's just naturally, it's kind of a happy medium in terms of kind of locking you into that position.
One thing I like about having the wedge Smith machine squat and then doing Smith machine good mornings after that, although I do actually do some of my arm work like in between here. I have an overhead dumbbell tricep extension, and I do that as a peripheral superset just for time efficiency. But anyway, when I do the good mornings after the Smith machine squat, if I notice that my strength or performance is down on the Smith machine good morning, I know I probably shifted too far back, and I'm getting too much glute. So it's kind of a check on itself. And then the other big change is that I'm doing single leg high stance leg press, which I've been feeling a lot in my glutes and even some of my hams a bit, which is pretty cool. I find the loadability on some movements is limited. Like as you get stronger, they become more and more and more of a pain in the ass, pun intended. That's why I abandoned the Bulgarian split squats, and I certainly feel more glute DOMs from doing high stance leg press.
Yeah, it's a really good movement, especially with a pause, adding a slight pause at the bottom. And that's interesting what you said about hamstrings too, because I know, on most squat centric type movements, people, like, they're not intended to train the hamstrings, but any time where, in the rationale there is like you're lengthening at one joint as much as you're shortening at the other, so overall muscle length isn't changing. With something like this, where you're going into like deep hip flexion with less knee flexion, like it is changing length. Like that statement, like I would never program squats for hamstrings, but that statement really, you can have somebody's anthropometrics that force them to use some hamstrings on a squat. And so I think there's context that's kind of useful to know there, because I've noticed the same thing. I've noticed definitely hamstring and not adductor to some extent, and I think that's an area I think a lot of people get confused, is they feel that soreness and they assume it's like, their inner hamstring, and it's actually their adductor.
Yeah, and on something that has less degrees of freedom, like a leg press as well, as far as what planes it can move in, it's only going to, if you exert force against it, it's only going to go up. So you can do things like actually consciously thinking of pressing more through your heel and not doing as much of a leg extension. While even if you are built like a very hip dominant squatter and you're doing a good morning style squat, it's still not going to be that much hams, just because you have to stand up with it and you're balancing it. And at the point at which you finished your early knee extension and now you are doing largely hip extension, now the muscle does not lengthen as much anymore. So it's not great. But yeah, I do think if someone is quote unquote good morning their squat, like a good morning, they are getting probably a little more hamstring than the average person. But a better choice if we're trying to intentionally train the hamstrings. Just do the good morning. Exactly. So anyway, day 2, those are the major changes. And I would say if there wasn't one change that I'll talk about that I did on my second leg day, it probably wouldn't be enough time course of recovery. So day 3, that really hasn't changed much at all. So day 4, the big one, I have Romanian deadlift lifted here as a barbell. And it is a barbell, but it's actually a trap barbell. That's a hex bar Romanian deadlift. And that has been a game changer as far as my recovery. I didn't realize how much of my lumbar soreness and recovery time arc was due to just having to navigate my shins. Yeah. And now that I've switched the trap bar, it seriously takes a full day off of like the recovery from my lower back. And
I like that. I like that switch. It's kind of the comfort of a dumbbell RDL without the pain in the ass of using dumbbells.
I was experimenting with this, and I'm doing like 20 reps if I do both dumbbells at the same time, which gets old real quick. Yeah. And then you're fearing getting stronger because you're like, sick, now I have to do 25 reps.
I'll just do more reps.
Yeah. Now, one thing I really do like, being able to do a B stance dumbbell Romanian deadlift, and you can really get maybe 80% of the stimulus in just one leg. That is really good. And now we're only doing like 6 to 12 reps. The problem, though, I found is that if you want to do, let's say, 4 sets for one leg and 4 sets for the other leg,
a lot of time.
It's 8 sets for your lumbar, and it's a lot of time.
Yeah. So that's a good point.
So I was doing that, and I found I really just couldn't recover from more than 3 sets. So I was getting a better quality per set, but the total amount of sets was taking a beating on my lower back. So finding the hex bar deadlift is that nice medium was perfect. So now the 2 leg days really synergize well together. I recover quickly and on time from both, and I do feel a lot of beat upness for a couple days, but once it comes around, I'm good to go again. Yes, and then I got the single leg high stance leg press again on that day. It just comes after the very quad dominant leg press and the RDL. So that day is a pretty brutal leg day, but it's great. Day 5, this is where some minor changes have occurred. Instead of doing the concentration curls, we just have 2 exercises that are, not short and biased. So we got preacher curls, and then we got incline curls. So that was really the only change. I've been liking doing the cable lat push downs that we added there along with the lateral raises. And then just so people can see what I generally do on my day 6, I finish this 20 to 30 minutes. It's just antagonist paired set with the wrist curls one way, the other way, and then single leg dumbbell calf raises, which I actually kind of do in a circuit with those 2. Lateral raises with a dumbbell. This is where I am actually doing a short and biased exercise, just because I know I can recover. And then I do BFR back extensions and BFR length and partial sissy squats. And because they're BFR, I do 4 sets. I do a high rep set and just drop down from there. These are both things that I don't do all the way to failure. And you might think like BFR back extension, that's weird. The cool thing about it is that because the BFR is only impacting my hammies, I feel them a bit more in it, even though they would normally be fine with the bodyweight back extension. They fatigue early, and then I start to notice my glutes later in the set are really starting to get lit up. And it's, again, a short and biased movement with BFR. There's a little bit of data indicates BFR doesn't produce as much muscle damage. So it's a way to get the volume a little bit higher on legs. Because in terms of the total work is behind the upper body. But I'm fine by my first leg day, that limbs day. It's just basically, honestly, it's just me trying to see if I can get away with speeding a bit more. And then doing some work on muscle groups that I never trained before, like my forearms.
One thing, the incline curl, you'd mentioned, we'd swapped out the concentration curl for that. And it's, it's more lengthen biased, but it's more lengthen biased than a concentration, but it's not another Asian curl or cable curl. And, when a lot of people do incline curls, they tend to use a little bit of shoulder flexion at the end, which actually sometimes at the beginning, if you use it kind of at the beginning, then it kind of turns into a preacher curl, but with your arm at 0 degrees or your shoulder at 0 degrees. So on paper, it still looks short and biased, but in practice, I think it's kind of a happy medium.
I would agree. It's not super well loaded, even though you are starting in that, because you don't really have peak loading until your forearms parallel to the ground, and that's you're in more shoulder extension, but it's still at a relatively moderate position. But it's the same point at which, when you're doing a concentration curl, the peak loading occurs because gravity's still in the same spot, and in a concentration curl, you're in a little more shoulder flexion. So it's a slightly better exercise. So let's jump to week 7.
All right.
Week 7 is where we start the lat specialization. So big changes here are not that big, but they're relatively minor. We've got the lat pull down coming first in the order, with 4 sets and then 3 sets on incline Smith. So it's just a little more lat work focused, starting with it and then not doing quite as many sets. The cambered bar bench is also 3 sets and cable row is 4. So we're just basically turning this kind of chest, back, and shoulders day into like a back, chest, and shoulders day, if you will, in just terms of the priority. Day 2 is essentially unchanged. There is just a little bit less on the glute work. So the Smith Machine Good Mornings are 3 sets. The high foot position on the leg press is 3 sets, and the lying leg curl is 3 sets. Besides that, it is the same. So this is just an opportunity to kind of take advantage of the idea that we're just making some adaptive resources available for focusing on the lats more. So upper, this is now a little bit more lat focused. We're swapping the order of the Life Fitness chest press and the lat pull down. It's coming first, dropping 1 set off the chest press. And then we've got, again, 1 less set on incline dumbbells and still keeping 4 on single arm cable rows. And then we have essentially the same for the rest of it, except there is not a upper back focused shrug after the row. So that is one small change. It's just a Life Fitness row, because my upper back was another place we identified that had actually come up a lot, and we're needing to focus more on my lower lat, or sorry, my lower back, my lats.
Are you wanting to do like post failure partials on any of the back work?
My plan is just to define failure as the point where I can't even get half a rep. So okay. I'm planning on doing that basically on all of my lat work.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of piggyback off what you were saying with like bench, and doing partials on a free weight pressing movement. It's probably unnecessary, I would say, but something like a pull down, even if you do it unilaterally and get like a good stretch, like the peak demands are still like medium to short. Bottom. So that could be a good, doing the way I incorporate that usually is like on the last set, I might take it to like you said, redefine failure on that set and, make it 25% of the original range of motion or something. So
absolutely,
I think they have more utility probably in movements where the resistance profile is similar to like a pull down.
I agree, and I'm taking that same approach. So day 4, that is identical, except that I've just dropped the set off of hams and glutes for each exercise. So Romanian deadlift is 3 sets, high stance leg press is 3 sets, leg curl is 3 sets. And then the big change to the program is that the shoulders and arm focused upper body day is now a lat and shoulders and arm focused day. So instead of starting with a wide grip row that's a little more rear delt focused, with completing it with like scapular shrugs and pairing that with shoulder press, we're pairing underhand lat pull downs, which I really like with it. And those again will be training in that like post failure kind of approach on those final sets. We still do have some rows, but I've gone to a seated wide grip row, which I think is a nice kind of balance between rear delts and also getting a fair bit of lats. And then instead of doing the cable lat push downs, we've actually got a full blown dumbbell pullover, which I like. It's not super lat biased. It might be a little more teres major, but I think functionally, in terms of visually, what people think of that guy's got amazing lats, they're including the discussion of their teres major. And pullovers are a nice natural length and partial. And then it's just a little bit less arm work. There's still a preacher curl. There's still an incline French press. Just a lot more lat work. And that kind of that day is what is primarily changing this program.
Like it.
Like you were saying, really leveraging the intensity. And by that, I mean proximity to failure and post-failure stuff. Like anytime I'm training my lats during these are going to be primarily to failure or to 9.5 and 9 RPEs. So I'll tell you what, Brian, it's rare that I'm actually able to get DOMs in my lats.
I think a lot of that is just the nature of most pulling movements,
Yes. So I'm not too concerned about like, oh, you're doing too much with all this failure work on your lat pull downs and backs. Like, that's
sometimes I'll even program pulling movements at lower average RIRs than pressing and things like that. So, and I think with the addition of the more length and biased arm work and kind of getting rid of that, I think because recovery, like when you say you're fully recovering, is performance on. Like I would still look at performance rather than soreness there. So if you feel like performance is dropping off on subsequent days, then even if you're not sore, then that's a conversation we can have.
No, that's absolutely indicator one. I mean, there are times I'm still sore, but I'm improving performance. Exactly. So I think people do need to be aware that DOMS tells you something about the overload and the amount of damage you produced, because those are linked. But true recovery does have to. It is partially informed or technically informed by your ability to make progress and produce overload again. So you feel pretty comfortable with this program?
You think I like it. And then you're thinking, I mean, you're already 2 weeks into this, and the tentative plan is to kind of run this 12-week cycle, 2 6-week blocks. And once you get through this, run it one more time then start prep.
That's basically the plan. I think we're thinking of starting prep sometime in March. The game planning, I actually did hit 92 kilos yesterday. That would have been Friday the 27th of September. My average weight is still at like 90 point high, and it was absolutely a Thai food related sodium incident. But the thing is I have Thai food semi-regularly, so it is a higher peak weight. Yeah, I've still got pretty good separation everywhere, and I'm not a very veiny guy, so I know when I'm like, hey, I hit 92 and I have a bicep vein, like someone's like, so what? I always have a bicep vein.
Yeah.
I don't always have a bicep vein, damn it. Things are going really, really well still. I can definitely see that my body fat is a fair bit higher than I was, say, 3-4 kilos ago.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like it's 4 kilos of body fat higher. Let's put it that way.
Not at all. Yeah, I would suspect there might be a little tiny bit of pre-prep fat loss. Not much.
Yeah, I'm thinking sometime in November.
Yeah,
would be where we would want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we just need to think about the timing of where the program falls at that point, because I do feel like I'm pushing about pretty close to what I can handle, and I wonder if I'm in a 500 calorie deficit all of a sudden, if what I can handle doesn't change.
Yeah,
I might have to be careful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that very well could be the case. Like, I don't usually proactively reduce volume, but when someone's doing this amount of volume, it's like, it might be a reasonable safeguard, but
for sure,
yeah, we'll figure it out.
Well, Brian, I think that's all I got for you. I'll be keeping you updated as I'm approaching what we thought might be the point where we would want to do that mini cut. As my average body weight gets into the high 91s, I'll start sending you a video update, and we'll figure out if it's time to pull the trigger, or if we just let it be what it is and just do it in November, because that's probably the best time anyway.
Then we'll just kind of maintain for 2 to 3 months.
Or we could cut, like you mentioned earlier, we could cut a little past the point where we think we need to, and then give me some runway.
That might be a good approach to take, is just tentatively plan on the mini cut, knowing that we could go past and be in a slight surplus the first of the year.
Yeah, my first thought is touch 89 and then get back up to the low 90s, and that's a great place to start prep in March if target stage weight's 80-ish,
For sure.
Well, man, I'm looking forward to walking with the Giants in 2025.
Let's do it.